How can someone foresee their own end, describe every detail, and still move forward as if they knew their destiny was inevitable? Princess Diana, a figure adored by millions, not only lived under the watchful eye of the public but also left behind a disturbing warning. A letter that seemed to anticipate her own death. Was it a supernatural premonition or evidence that hidden forces were at work? Diana, known for her courage and vulnerability, was always in a delicate position, torn between her connection to the people and the rigid power structures surrounding her. But her life also holds mysteries that defy simple explanations. And the famous letter, which spoke of a carefully planned car accident, was not just a cry for help but perhaps the key to unraveling the enigma of her death. Could Diana have known more than she was able to reveal? Diana Frances Spencer was born on July 1, 1961, into a British aristocratic family with close ties to royalty. From an early age, her life was marked by contrasts. Wealth and prestige coexisted with the pain of an unstable childhood, worsened by her parents' divorce. Young Diana grew up surrounded by expectations, but also by an emotional void that would shape her sensitive and empathetic personality. When she married Prince Charles in 1981, Diana seemed like the embodiment of a modern fairy tale. The ceremony was watched by millions worldwide, and the young princess was quickly elevated to the status of a global icon. But, as we know, not all fairy tales have happy endings. Behind the cameras, Diana faced a completely different reality. The dynamics of her marriage to Charles were marked by tension from the beginning. Despite the image of a perfect couple, signs of a cold and distant relationship soon became evident. The shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles, a significant figure in Charles's heart, became a constant, leaving Diana in a position of emotional vulnerability. Who wouldn't feel the weight of living under such conditions? Diana, however, did not allow herself to be entirely defeated. She found strength in her connection with the public, something that set her apart from other members of the royal family. Her natural charisma and genuine empathy allowed her to build a unique relationship with the people. The princess stood out not only for her beauty and style, but also for her courage in addressing taboo topics, such as the AIDS crisis and landmine issues. Yet, ironically, this same connection with the people that made her so beloved also began to unsettle those in positions of power. Diana started to be seen as a threat to the status quo, a figure who could, albeit unintentionally, challenge the rigid hierarchy of the British monarchy. How far could an institution like the monarchy tolerate someone who, even unwittingly, questioned its authority? Her challenges were not limited to her marriage or family politics. Diana also struggled with internal issues that manifested intensely. Bulimia, which she later described as a cry for help, was a response to the overwhelming pressure she felt in both her public role and private life. Furthermore, the depression she faced was often ignored or minimized by those around her. Still, Diana found ways to resist. Spirituality began to play an important role in her life, offering her refuge amidst the chaos. She sought answers in astrology, therapy, and even spiritual readings. Could this search for meaning be what made her so special, so different from any other public figure? Over time, Diana began to realize that her position as a princess was not just a privilege but also a prison. The restrictions imposed by royal protocol suffocated her, and her growing independence began to be seen as a threat. In discreet interviews, she hinted at her lack of trust in those around her, something that would, over time, become a central theme in her narrative. Despite all of this, Diana never stopped using her position to do good. Her humanitarian work took her around the world, visiting hospitals, refugee camps, and war zones. But these altruistic gestures, far from appeasing the forces surrounding her, only heightened the tension. After all, how could a woman meant to be merely a symbol act with such independence? Behind the scenes, the monarchy appeared increasingly uncomfortable with her popularity. Diana was no longer just a princess. She had become a global force that transcended the title bestowed upon her. But at what cost? And what happens when someone refuses to fit into the mold imposed upon them? Ultimately, Diana began to realize that her fight was not just against the people around her but against a larger structure, a system that seemed determined to control every aspect of her life. Could this realization have been what led her to write the letter that would later be regarded as her most unsettling message? Her story, up to this point, compels us to reflect. How far can someone go to find freedom in a world so rigidly controlled? Diana Spencer was more than a public figure. Behind the glitter of jewels and the glamour of royal appearances was a woman searching for something greater than titles and traditions could offer. Her connection to the spiritual world began as an attempt to understand the challenges she faced, but evolved into a profound journey of self-discovery and intuition that would mark the final years of her life. Throughout her path, Diana sought answers to questions that seemed impossible to resolve. How does one cope with the weight of overwhelming expectations? How does one find true purpose in an environment that feels so devoid of meaning? These questions led her to explore mysticism, a realm often overlooked by those living under the rigid scrutiny of the monarchy. One of the first spiritual influences in her life was astrology. Diana was fascinated by natal charts and consulted renowned astrologers for guidance. Her chart pointed to intense challenges, but also to a prominent role as an agent of transformation. She believed her mission went beyond being a princess. She felt she had come into the world to bring profound changes, even if it meant facing resistance. In addition to astrology, Diana also sought out mediums and psychics, people who, according to her, helped confirm what her intuition already sensed. It's fascinating to consider that one of the most photographed women in the world sought answers in such intimate spiritual practices. Doesn't this reveal her humanity and vulnerability? In the final years of her life, Diana reported having disturbing dreams. In one, she saw herself trapped in a dark tunnel, unable to find a way out. The symbolism of the tunnel, as both passage and transformation, resonates deeply in various spiritual traditions. For her, however, this dream seemed more like a premonition of what was to come. These dreams were accompanied by a growing sense that something dangerous was approaching. Diana began telling close friends that she felt she was being watched, that there were forces working against her. Isn't it curious how intuition can alert us to things we cannot rationally explain? This sensitivity was not new to Diana. From a young age, she seemed to have a unique connection to the suffering of others. It was as if she could feel the pain of those around her, something that brought her closer to the public but also made her vulnerable. Perhaps this same sensitivity was what alerted her to the dangers she faced. The decision to write the now famous letter in 1995 was, in part, a result of this intuition. In the letter, she described what she feared was a plan to end her life. It was a cry for help, but also a way to leave a record of what she knew. Why would someone write something so detailed unless they had real reasons to believe it? Diana didn't only confide her fears to paper. She openly discussed her concerns with close individuals, including her butler, Paul Burrell, and a few intimate friends. Strangely, however, few seemed to take her words as seriously as she did. At the same time, Diana began transforming her fear into action. She intensified her humanitarian work and began speaking of her mission as something almost spiritual. For her, helping others wasn't just a choice but a calling. This connection to the spiritual also gave her strength amid difficulties. She spoke of love and compassion as transformative forces, believing they were the energies that could truly change the world. Perhaps this is why so many people around the world still feel connected to her, even decades after her death. But with her growing spiritual awareness also came a sense of isolation. Diana seemed to understand that her journey was unique, that few could truly comprehend her. This made her even more determined to protect what was important to her: her children, her causes, and her truth. What is most intriguing about her spiritual journey is how she seemed to know her story was reaching a climax. She didn't know how or exactly when, but she sensed that something would change drastically soon. This perception, more than anything else, led her to document her fears. Her search for spiritual answers, her heightened sensitivity, and her ability to see beyond appearances leave us with an unsettling question. Was Diana truly predicting her own fate, or was it her spiritual connection that led her to act as if she already knew what was coming? In 1995, Diana Spencer wrote a document that still echoes as a silent cry of warning. The famous letter, entrusted to her loyal butler, Paul Burrell, contained a disturbing prediction: the possibility of her death in a carefully orchestrated car accident. This note, later revealed to the public, made it clear that Diana knew she was in danger. But how did she come to this conclusion? The letter begins almost pragmatically, as if Diana were drafting a memorandum to preserve crucial facts. She stated clearly, "My life is at its most dangerous stage. Someone is planning a car accident, brake failure and serious head injuries, to make way for Charles to marry again." The precision of these words raises an unsettling question. Was Diana truly foreseeing the future, or was she dealing with information that couldn't be ignored? To understand the context of this message, it's essential to revisit the time it was written. In 1995, Diana was undergoing a phase of transformation. She had formally separated from Charles but still faced constant conflicts with the royal family and the media. Additionally, she was engaged in a process of self-discovery that made her increasingly independent and simultaneously more isolated. Diana began to realize that her independence and popularity were unsettling not only for the monarchy but also for other powerful forces. Her movements were monitored, and she was aware of it. There was a strange pattern in her life. Confidential information was leaked, rumors emerged out of nowhere, and her public image seemed carefully manipulated. Was this paranoia, or was Diana connecting dots others chose to ignore? The decision to put these concerns into writing was not casual. For Diana, the letter was a way to leave a record of her truth, something that couldn't be erased or silenced. She knew her words would become a crucial piece of evidence if something happened to her. Isn't this kind of action typical of those who feel genuine fear? Paul Burrell, who kept the letter safe for years after Diana's death, described the document as a time bomb. He stated that Diana trusted him because she believed few around her were on her side. This illustrates how surrounded she felt by forces she couldn't control. The letter, however, was not Diana's only way of expressing her concerns. She often spoke about her suspicions to close friends and even to journalists. On one occasion, during a confidential interview, Diana said, "If anything happens to me, you can be sure it wasn't an accident." These words, like the letter, carry a tone of urgency and awareness. But what exactly led Diana to believe she would be silenced? Many point to the mounting pressure she faced. Her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed, a Muslim businessman, caused discomfort in conservative circles. Her global popularity was a challenge for an institution accustomed to controlling narratives. And perhaps most significantly, Diana was a woman who knew too much. The letter also reveals something deeper: Diana's spirituality and intuition. She seemed to pick up on subtle signs that something was wrong, signals that many might overlook. Was this spiritual connection what gave her the certainty she was being targeted by dark forces? Or were there concrete facts she couldn't openly share? At the same time, it's remarkable that Diana didn't allow fear to paralyze her. Despite her concerns, she continued to travel, work on her causes, and live her life as fully as possible. This duality, knowing she was in danger yet forging ahead, demonstrates extraordinary strength. The existence of the letter was only revealed to the public years after her death, sparking a wave of questions. Why was this document kept secret for so long? What does this say about those who surrounded Diana? And most importantly, why were her prophetic words ignored while she was still alive? This message, both a warning and a heartfelt confession, remains proof that Diana felt she was dealing with forces beyond her control. Its almost eerie accuracy only deepens the mystery surrounding her life and death. But there is something even more disturbing. If Diana was right, what does this imply about the role the monarchy and other institutions played in her story? On the night of August 31, 1997, the world was shaken by the news of Princess Diana's death. She, her companion Dodi Al-Fayed, and driver Henri Paul died in a car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. The sole survivor was Dodi's bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, who sustained severe injuries. Since then, the tragedy has been shrouded in doubts, inconsistencies, and a mystery that seems never to be fully resolved. The official version points to an accident caused by recklessness. According to investigations, Henri Paul, the driver, was speeding and under the influence of alcohol. They were fleeing paparazzi on motorcycles who relentlessly pursued them. However, many details of this account have been questioned over the years. The first detail that raised suspicions was the behavior of the security cameras. At the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, where the crash occurred, none of the cameras were operational at that time. It's hard to imagine that, in a city like Paris, the security cameras at such a strategic point were coincidentally off on the night of the accident. Coincidence or manipulation? Another intriguing detail was the delay in medical assistance. The crash occurred around midnight, but Diana didn't arrive at the hospital until over an hour later. Although she was still alive when rescued, the lost time proved critical. Why was there such a delay in aiding such a high-profile figure? Additionally, witnesses at the scene reported seeing a white Fiat Uno leaving the tunnel immediately after the crash. This vehicle was never located, and investigators failed to identify who might have been driving it. This fueled speculation that the Fiat may have played a crucial role in the tragedy. But the questions don't stop there. Henri Paul, the driver, was quickly blamed for the accident. However, subsequent investigations revealed inconsistencies in the toxicology reports. Doubts arose about the levels of alcohol found in his blood, suggesting the possibility of tampered evidence. Was Henri Paul truly in no condition to drive, or was he being used as a scapegoat? The presence of the paparazzi also drew heavy criticism. They had followed Diana and Dodi's car from the Ritz Hotel, where the couple was staying, to the tunnel. After the crash, rather than offering help, many continued taking photos, sparking global outrage. Yet, is it fair to blame the paparazzi alone, or were they just pieces in a larger game? For many, these inconsistencies suggest that the crash may have been something more elaborate. The letter Diana wrote 2 years earlier, predicting a car crash, reinforced the idea that she might have been the target of a conspiracy. After all, how could someone describe in such detail the very event that would claim their life? Diana was not an ordinary figure. Her global popularity, her criticisms of the monarchy, and her relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed made her a potential target for forces that preferred her out of the picture. Is it far-fetched to imagine that these forces could have been involved? The Pont de l'Alma tunnel also carries curious symbolism. The location, whose name translates to Bridge of the Soul, was once a sacred site for pagan rituals in antiquity. For occultism scholars, the choice of this site for such a significant event might not be coincidental. Could the crash have been part of something larger, a ritualistic event beyond our understanding? Other questions linger. Why did Dodi Al-Fayed, who rarely drew public attention, suddenly become so prominent in Diana's life? His connection to a business empire with Muslim roots unsettled the more conservative circles of British society. For some, the idea of Diana, the mother of a future king, being involved with someone outside the royal mold was simply unacceptable. Conspiracy theories gained further traction when Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, claimed that the crash was a planned assassination. He alleged that the British royal family was involved, citing racism and prejudice as the primary motives for eliminating the couple. Although these allegations remain unproven, they raised significant doubts about what really happened that night. While official investigations concluded the case as a tragic accident, the inconsistencies and symbolism persist. Diana seemed aware that something like this could happen. Her letter, her premonitory dreams, and the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death continue to fuel debates to this day. Was it truly just a simple accident caused by recklessness? Or was Diana right in believing that greater forces were working to silence her? Diana Spencer was not merely a threat to the monarchy because of her global popularity. She represented something far deeper, a psychological and spiritual challenge to the very balance of power within the royal family. Her presence, so intense and human, starkly contrasted with the reserved and rigid image the British monarchy had cultivated for centuries. Within the palace walls, Diana symbolized a rupture in the status quo. Her ability to show genuine emotion and connect authentically with people exposed an uncomfortable truth: the emotional disconnect between the monarchy and the public it purported to represent. Was the monarchy, with all its traditions, ready for a world where the public began to value vulnerability over cold perfection? On a symbolic level, Diana embodied the energy of transformation. She was the light that illuminated the darkest corners of an institution reliant on opacity and mystery to maintain its power. Spiritually speaking, the monarchy operates as an archetype of stability, while Diana was the disruptive force of change. How could these two conflicting energies coexist without one obliterating the other? Her growing independence not only challenged behavioral norms but also began to unveil the rituals of control the monarchy exerted over its members. Diana, perhaps unintentionally, seemed to draw back curtains revealing the theater behind royalty. Her mere presence highlighted the internal contradictions of the system. But Diana's impact extended beyond palace walls. Her global influence also challenged external power dynamics. Governments, corporations, and the media itself seemed to recognize that Diana represented a force transcending politics and tradition. Was it only the monarchy that felt threatened, or was a larger system at play? One that depended on silencing the princess? Diana's relationship with Dodi al-Fayed added yet another layer to this conflict. While much has been said about the discomfort this relationship caused within the royal family, the truth is that her union with Dodi symbolized something far deeper: the shattering of the narrative of purity and royal lineage tradition. What would it mean for the monarchy if the mother of the future king were to marry someone outside the established norms? For conspiracy theorists, this issue was not merely about image but about symbolic power. Diana, with her popularity and determination, was seen as someone capable of reshaping the monarchy's future. Not in the literal sense of overthrowing it, but in transforming it in ways some members were unwilling to accept. On a psychological level, Diana seemed to reflect what the monarchy feared most: the loss of control. She was unpredictable, emotional, and deeply connected to the people. How could the royal family protect its image when Diana monopolized the public's affection? Would her brilliance ultimately eclipse not just Charles but the crown itself? Yet, it wasn't just the crown that felt Diana's impact. Her humanitarian work and ability to mobilize the masses began to touch political and economic spheres. By challenging industries such as landmine manufacturing, Diana entered an invisible battlefield that extended far beyond the monarchy. Could her influence in such controversial causes have unsettled other powerful groups? In this context, the letter Diana wrote in 1995 takes on a new perspective. She wasn't merely expressing fear, she was documenting what she felt to be inevitable. Diana seemed to understand that larger forces were at play, forces unwilling to tolerate her growing influence. But were these forces purely human? The symbolism of the tunnel where Diana met her end, Ponte el Alma, or Bridge of the Soul, raises questions about the spiritual meaning of her death. Some occult scholars suggest that her passing at this location was more than a coincidence. It may have been a ritualistic event, marking the closure of an energetic cycle Diana represented within the monarchy. Even after her death, Diana's impact continued to reverberate. She remains an archetype of authenticity in a world dominated by protocols and control. In this sense, her enduring influence is a symbolic defeat for any system that sought to silence her. If her life and death teach us anything, it is that even the most powerful forces cannot extinguish the light of truth. But this leaves us with a crucial question. Was her passing truly an accident, or was it the response of a system incapable of managing the disruptive force she represented? The death of Princess Diana was not merely a tragic event. It was an occurrence imbued with symbolism, energies, and spiritual connections that continue to resonate today. For those who study mysticism and the occult, her life and passing represent far more than what appears on the surface. Could Diana's death have been part of something greater, a spiritual cycle she herself seemed to sense? The Pont de el Alma tunnel, where the crash occurred, is a site historically linked to spiritual and symbolic practices. In ancient times, it was a space dedicated to pagan rituals, where rites of passage were performed to honor deities associated with transitions between life and death. The name of the tunnel, meaning Bridge of the Soul, is not only poetic but also deeply resonant for those seeking spiritual meaning in seemingly random events. Was the location of the crash chosen deliberately by some unseen force, or was it merely a coincidence? For students of the occult, energy-charged places like Ponte el Alma often serve as convergence points for events of great significance. Diana, with her radiant energy and connection to the collective unconscious, might have been symbolically, or even fatefully, drawn to this location. What makes her death even more enigmatic is the symbolism of her life. Diana was, in many ways, an archetype: the healer, the rebel, the mother, and ultimately, the martyr. In esoteric traditions, figures who embody such archetypes often fulfill missions of transformation that subtly influence the world. She was not just a princess, she was a conduit of energy that challenged power structures and revealed hidden truths. Diana's spiritual impact extended beyond her humanitarian actions. She carried an aura of vulnerability and authenticity that allowed people to connect with her on a profound level. This connection was something rare, almost magical, in a public figure. To many, she was a queen of hearts in a literal sense, someone who touched people's souls and awakened something greater within them. But within a system like the British monarchy, where rituals, symbols, and tradition play essential roles, was her light too overwhelming to endure? In mysticism, forces that promote change often encounter resistance, especially from systems that rely on stability and control. Diana embodied this disruptive force. Her connection to spiritual practices also deserves attention. Diana consulted astrologers, mediums, and therapists who helped guide her decisions. It's no coincidence that she reported premonitory dreams about tunnels and accidents before her death. These dreams can be interpreted as warnings from her subconscious or even as spiritual messages preparing her soul for what was to come. The crash itself, with all its mysterious circumstances, also raises spiritual questions. The delay in assistance, the malfunctioning cameras, the mysterious white Fiat Uno that was never located, all of it points to an event that doesn't seem to be merely an accident. To some, this has been interpreted as a ritualistic sacrifice, something that, in occult traditions, is often associated with the closing of power cycles. Diana's death had a profound impact on both the monarchy and the world's collective unconscious. Her passing forced the royal family to reconsider its role in the 21st century, adapting to the expectations of a changing public. However, the cost was immense, and her absence left a spiritual void that remains unfilled. And what of her legacy? Diana continues to inspire millions, decades after her death. Her story is a reminder that light, even in the midst of darkness, cannot be extinguished. Her humanitarian work, her connection to people, and her courage in challenging rigid systems are reflections of her spiritual mission. Ultimately, her life and death leave us with a question. What did Diana truly represent to the world? Was she a figure destined to awaken profound change, or merely a woman who, by following her intuition, ended up challenging forces beyond her control? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. Diana transcended mortality to become an eternal symbol of love, compassion, and truth. Princess Diana's life and death transcend the simple narrative of a royal tragedy. She was more than a public figure. She became a symbol of resistance, compassion, and transformation. Her journey showed us how the pursuit of authenticity can challenge even the most ancient and powerful systems, and how her connection to spirituality helps us understand that there is much more beyond what we can see. Her final years, marked by premonitions, fears, and courage, reveal a woman who, even surrounded by shadows, chose to illuminate the world with her presence. Diana left us a legacy that continues to challenge paradigms, reminding us that truth and love are forces that can never be silenced. If you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, I've handpicked some videos filled with profound knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you'll love. Just click on one to begin. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step toward transforming your reality.